Welcome to our channel. Today, we take a fascinating journey back in time to explore life in 1880s America during the Gilded Age, from the glittering mansions of the wealthy to the crowded tenements of working-class neighborhoods. We'll uncover the stories, struggles, and daily rhythms that define this transformative era. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more history videos, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode. Now let's dive into 2 hours of life in the Gilded Age, 1880s America. Imagine stepping into the streets of New York City in the 1880s, the heart of an America teeming with life, energy, and contradiction. The morning begins with a clatter of hooves on cobblestones, the rhythmic sound of horse-drawn carriages weaving between the narrow streets and crowded thoroughfares. The air is already thick with the acrid scent of coal smoke and the pungent odor of refuse, which has not yet been collected from the alleys and side streets. Vendors stand on corners, their voices cutting through the morning bustle, hawking bread, eggs, vegetables, and newspapers, their calls blending into a continuous symphony of the city's awakening. The sun, rising over the skyline, struggles to pierce the veil of smoke, casting a gray-gold light on the facades of brick tenements and the grand stone buildings of the emerging commercial district. In these streets, life is immediately defined by contrast. A man in a crisp suit, his shoes polished to a mirror shine, walks briskly toward the bank, his pocket watch tucked neatly in a vest. Nearby, a woman in a soiled dress clutches a child by the hand as she navigates the uneven stones, trying to keep her balance while carrying a basket of meager provisions. Their worlds, though separated by mere blocks, exist in starkly different realities. The wealthy industrialist enjoys the comforts of imported coffee and freshly baked pastries in the privacy of a lavish breakfast room, where polished wood furniture, silverware, and fine china signal a life of security and privilege. Yet just a few streets away, entire families share a single stove in a dim, overcrowded tenement apartment. Their morning begins with the chore of preparing whatever meager meal they can, stretching every penny of their wages to cover rent, food, and clothing, all while preparing to face the long day ahead in factories, shops, or the streets themselves. The streets themselves are a theater of motion. Push carts clatter along the stone, their wooden wheels squealing under heavy loads of fruit, vegetables, and household goods. Children dart between the legs of pedestrians, their laughter mingling with cries and curses alike. Some play with simple toys or handmade balls, unaware of the labor and responsibility that awaits them. Others have already begun to learn the harsh lessons of work, helping their parents carry goods or fetching water for the household, their small hands calloused by necessity. Dogs roam freely, scavenging scraps of food, while the occasional stray cat slips silently along the edges of the street, eyes glinting in the morning light. The energy of the city is chaotic, relentless, and all-encompassing. Amid this chaos, the factories loom as great machines of both opportunity and exploitation. Towering structures of brick and iron dominate the skyline, their chimneys spitting black smoke that stains the air and the clothes of anyone who passes nearby. Inside, the roar of machinery drowns out conversation, creating a constant, almost oppressive hum that defines the industrial rhythm of the city. The factory floor is a world unto itself, where laborers, many of them immigrants from Ireland, Germany, Italy, and Eastern Europe, work tirelessly from morning until evening. The air is filled with dust, steam, and the occasional acrid scent of chemicals depending on the industry. Men, women, and children move like cogs in a larger machine, performing repetitive tasks for wages that barely allow them to survive. Injuries are common, medical care is minimal, and the work is exhausting. Yet these factories are also places of opportunity for those who seek to earn, survive, or eventually prosper. Life in the tenements, meanwhile, tells a story of resilience and hardship. These crowded apartment buildings are home to multiple families crammed into a single space. Rooms are small, often with peeling plaster, cracked windows, and little ventilation. The morning begins with the sounds of families waking, the scrape of chairs, the hiss of water boiling on a single stove, the murmured arguments or instructions exchanged in a dozen different languages. Laundry is hung on lines stretching across the narrow courtyards, while neighbors gather to exchange news, gossip, or simply a moment of companionship. Children navigate the narrow staircases and hallways with practiced skill, balancing the precarious combination of play and responsibility. Illness is a constant threat in these dense, unsanitary spaces. Diseases like tuberculosis, cholera, and typhoid lurk in the shadows, a grim reminder of the daily dangers of urban life. Meanwhile, the wealthier districts of the city paint a very different picture. Townhouses line the avenues, their facades immaculate, adorned with wrought iron railings, polished stone steps, and neatly trimmed gardens. Inside, breakfasts are elaborate affairs, prepared by a staff of domestic workers. Imported delicacies from Europe are served alongside the latest American innovations, coffee from the growing plantations, fresh fruits brought from nearby farms or imported through the ports, and baked goods that fill the air with a comforting scent of warmth and abundance. Children of affluent families play in private gardens or ride in carriages with governesses, while their parents discuss business, politics, or social obligations over the meal. The morning light reflects off polished silver and glass, symbolizing both literal and figurative separation from the struggles that define the lives of those living only blocks away. Across the city, transportation itself tells the story of industrial progress and inequality. Streetcars pulled by horses or the early electrified lines emerging in certain districts carry workers to factories and offices, while wealthier citizens travel in private carriages or ride along newly paved roads. The trains, steam engines snorting and hissing as they depart, connect neighborhoods, cities, and eventually regions, allowing commerce, migration, and opportunity to flow across the nation. Yet, for those without the means to afford these conveniences, walking remains the only option, a daily reminder of the social stratification embedded in every aspect of urban life. As morning progresses, the markets awaken in full force. Vendors display their wares in chaotic abundance, from fresh produce to textiles, meats to household goods. The calls of merchants compete with the clamor of delivery men and the rattle of carts. Immigrant communities cluster around markets that cater to their needs, exchanging language, customs, and culinary traditions that shape the cultural mosaic of the city. Here, one sees the promise of opportunity and community, but also the weight of survival as families haggle over prices, calculate expenses, and stretch every dollar to feed and clothe the household. In the factories, the pace quickens. Machines clatter with renewed urgency, the supervisor's voice is sharp with instruction, the workers' movements mechanical and precise. Assembly lines, though still rudimentary compared to the efficiency that would come in later decades, demand coordination and endurance. Children assist with small, repetitive tasks, learning the trades that may allow them to continue within the industrial economy, yet sacrificing much of their childhood in the process. The air smells of metal, oil, coal, and sweat, a pungent testament to human labor transformed into production. Every piece manufactured, every item packed, every motion repeated, contributes not only to the factory owner's wealth, but also to the complex web of industrialization that defines the Gilded Age. The city is alive with sound, the ringing of bells from churches and schools, the shouts of children playing or working, the hooves of carriages on stone, the hiss and clank of factories, and the continual murmur of voices in streets, shops, and homes. Each sound tells a story, marking the rhythm of daily life for a population engaged in constant motion, both voluntary and imposed. The wealth disparity is felt in these very sounds. The laughter of well-fed children in private gardens contrasts sharply with the coughs of children working in smoke-filled workshops, while the cries of street vendors compete with the polite chatter of the elite enjoying morning promenades in leafy avenues. Even religion and education play distinct roles in the morning routines of the city. Churches ring their bells for early services, drawing congregations of the wealthy and middle classes seeking solace, guidance, or affirmation of social order. Sunday schools and mission schools prepare immigrant children for both moral instruction and practical skills, though access is uneven and often limited. Meanwhile, public schools in tenement districts struggle with overcrowding, lack of resources, and the competing necessity of child labor. Yet even within these limitations, the desire for knowledge, social mobility, and personal betterment pulses quietly, promising hope amid the struggles of urban life. The streets themselves are microcosms of the larger forces shaping America. On one block, a laborer hurries past the storefronts of a thriving merchant, carrying goods from the market. On another, a wealthy couple emerges from their townhouse, ready to enjoy the day's appointments. Immigrant communities cluster together, maintaining customs, foods, and traditions from their homelands, while also navigating the complexities of assimilation, prejudice, and opportunity. The visual and auditory contrast is striking. Fine carriages beside rickety carts, polished shoes beside patched boots, the laughter of children beside the cries of infants. Every interaction, every gesture, every choice underscores the layered reality of the city, a world of abundance and scarcity, of freedom and limitation, of hope and struggle. In the factories, the rhythm of work is relentless. Time is measured not by the sun or the church bells, but by the movement of machines and the orders of supervisors. Hands are calloused, backs ache, and lungs fill with dust. Yet there is a sense of purpose, of contributing to a growing economy, of earning a wage, of striving toward a better future. The social bonds formed among workers are strong, forged through shared labor, shared hardship, and shared dreams. Immigrant groups find solidarity, languages intermingle, and cultural practices adapt to the industrial rhythm, creating communities that are both resilient and resourceful. By mid-morning, the city is fully awake. The cacophony of sound, the swirl of movement, and the visible contrasts of wealth and poverty define every street, alley, and avenue. The wealthy retreat to private clubs or their offices, enjoying the fruits of commerce and industry. The laboring classes continue their daily grind, navigating factories, markets, and streets in pursuit of survival. Children learn early lessons in responsibility, endurance, and adaptability, shaping a generation that will grow up within the structures and contradictions of the Gilded Age. In these early hours, the city is a living organism, breathing, moving, and evolving. Every clatter, every shout, every gesture contributes to the larger story of America in the 1880s, a nation on the cusp of modernity, yet still struggling with inequality, social tension, and the human costs of progress. The morning in New York City is a microcosm of the Gilded Age itself, a world of promise and peril, of brilliance and struggle, of dreams pursued amid relentless challenge. To walk these streets, to observe these lives, is to witness the heartbeat of an era that would shape the nation for decades to come. And as the morning wears on, the city continues to pulse, the streets remaining alive with movement, energy, and human endeavor. The factories hum with production, the markets bustle with negotiation, and the tenements resonate with resilience. The morning in the Gilded Age is a time of activity, contrast, and vivid human experience, a prelude to the complexity and drama that the rest of the day will bring. In this urban landscape, life is defined by opportunity and adversity, by ambition and survival, by the promise of the industrial age and the stark reality of those who fuel it. By late morning the city begins to pulse with a different rhythm, one that stretches beyond the streets, the tenements, and the factories, and reaches into the chambers of power, where the forces shaping America are quietly yet decisively in motion. While the laborers and street vendors navigate the chaos of urban life, and children rush to and from schools or factories, the wheels of politics, finance, and industrial influence turn with an almost imperceptible weight, yet their impact is vast and enduring. The Gilded Age is as much a story of wealth and power as it is of labor and survival, and the interplay between the two defines the era with unmistakable clarity. In the ornate offices of Wall Street and the corridors of emerging corporate power, financiers, bankers, and railroad tycoons conduct their business with a mixture of calculation and ambition. The smell of polished wood, ink, and paper fills these spaces, mingling with the faint aroma of imported cigars. Here, deals are struck that can influence entire industries, affect the lives of thousands, and shape the very economic trajectory of the nation. One man's decision to invest, expand, or consolidate can ripple outward, creating fortunes for some and hardship for others. Yet for those walking the factory floors or negotiating the crowded markets, these monumental decisions often exist as abstract forces, powerful invisible currents that shape their lives but remain largely beyond their grasp. Politics in the Gilded Age is deeply intertwined with wealth, influence, and ambition. In Washington, D.C., and in the state houses of New York, Pennsylvania, and Illinois, legislators debate policies, propose regulations, and speak of justice and progress. Yet behind closed doors, the realities of patronage, corruption, and the influence of the powerful industrialists are ever present. Lobbyists and wealthy donors exert their influence quietly but effectively, ensuring that laws and regulations favor enterprise, expansion, and profit. The political landscape is both dynamic and opaque, with reformers striving to assert moral authority even as the machinery of power operates largely in secrecy. Scandals are common. Fraudulent railroads, misappropriated funds, and bribes passed discreetly between influential figures are whispered about in parlors and newspapers alike. Yet the glimmering veneer of progress, prosperity, and advancement masks the systemic inequalities and ethical compromises that define the period. The term Gilded Age, first coined by Mark Twain and Charles Dudley Warner, perfectly encapsulates this paradox. On the surface, America gleams with success, wealth, and progress. Skyscrapers rise, factories churn, railroads connect distant regions, and the streets bustle with commerce. But beneath this shining exterior lie the struggles of the working class, the corruption in politics, and the stark disparities that define social life. The gilded surface reflects light and promise, but it conceals shadows, exploitation, and inequality that touch nearly every aspect of life in the 1880s. In this paradox, one sees both the promise and peril of industrialization, a period where success is celebrated and deprivation is tolerated, where growth is lauded and human cost often ignored. As the day progresses, one sees the manifestations of this economic inequality everywhere. In the grand neighborhoods of Manhattan, Brooklyn, and parts of Philadelphia, mansions rise like fortresses of prosperity. Their facades, polished and imposing, reflect sunlight that seems to shimmer with promise. Carriages arrive with servants in uniform, bringing residents to breakfast appointments, business meetings, or social calls. The interiors of these homes are decorated with imported furniture, fine china, paintings from Europe, and crystal chandeliers that scatter light across polished wood floors. Breakfast is more than a meal. It is a performance, a statement of social status, taste, and cultural refinement. The wealthy discuss investments, railway expansions, stock acquisitions, and philanthropic initiatives, all the while surrounded by luxury that is unattainable for the vast majority of the population. Just a few blocks away, the stark contrast is impossible to ignore. Tenement blocks rise haphazardly, constructed quickly to accommodate the influx of immigrant labor. Their brick walls are stained, windows cracked, and staircases narrow. Families share rooms, often sleeping 4 or 5 to a space that would be considered a single bedroom in wealthier quarters. The morning here begins with the scramble to prepare food on a single stove, to dress children in patched clothing, and to get every member of the household ready for a day of work. Sanitation is minimal, with water often drawn from communal pumps and waste deposited into open gutters or shared privies. Illness is a constant threat, and life is lived with a careful attention to survival that contrasts sharply with the leisure and comfort of the elite. The city streets themselves are a theater for this disparity. In the financial districts, men in top hats and women in fine dresses walk briskly toward offices, banks, and social clubs. Their faces are calm, their movements deliberate, their steps confident. Nearby, laborers rush to catch streetcars or arrive at factory gates, their hands calloused, their clothes threadbare, and their faces marked by exhaustion and determination. The air carries both the scent of bread from bakeries and the stench of waste from the crowded streets, a reminder that prosperity and poverty coexist within the same urban landscape. The influence of industrialists and financiers extends beyond private homes and corporate offices. They dominate political decision-making, shaping policies that benefit industry and commerce, often at the expense of laborers and smaller competitors. Railroad tycoons in particular wield enormous power. The rail networks they control connect cities, towns, and regions, facilitating commerce and migration, but also granting them leverage over farmers, merchants, and entire communities. The contracts they negotiate, the fares they set, and the alliances they forge with politicians dictate economic patterns and influence the daily lives of millions. Banking magnates similarly shape credit, investment, and opportunity, creating both wealth and dependency in equal measure. Corruption, while pervasive, is not always openly acknowledged. Political machines such as Tammany Hall in New York exert influence over elections, municipal contracts, and public works. Bribes, favors, and patronage appointments ensure that loyalty and financial support are rewarded, often prioritizing personal gain over public good. Reformers decry these practices, yet the systems persist because the forces of power, money, and ambition are deeply entrenched. Newspapers, a primary medium of communication, report on scandals and achievements alike, offering glimpses into the complexity and contradictions of the era. Headlines tout the successes of industrialists and the promise of progress, while investigative pieces occasionally expose abuses of power, unsafe working conditions, and inequities in wealth distribution. The daily lives of individuals are shaped by these forces, often in subtle ways. For a factory worker, a decision made by a railroad executive or banker in distant offices can determine whether their goods are transported efficiently, whether raw materials arrive on time, and whether wages remain stable. For a merchant, government tariffs, trade agreements, and regulatory decisions influence the cost of imports and the competition within local markets. For a political aspirant or reformer, navigating the influence of wealthy patrons, political machines, and public opinion requires tact, persistence, and an acute awareness of power dynamics. Every action is interconnected, and the ripples of wealth, influence, and decision-making spread across the social, economic, and political landscape. Yet even amid this disparity and manipulation, the Gilded Age is marked by a remarkable growth and innovation. Railroads stretch across the continent, connecting distant towns and fostering the exchange of goods, culture, and ideas. Factories powered by steam and increasingly efficient machinery produce goods on a scale unimaginable in earlier decades. Banks, insurance companies, and investment houses expand, creating both opportunity and dependency. This progress is celebrated, studied, and emulated, forming the foundation for the modern American economy. The optimism of the age is palpable, particularly among those who benefit from wealth and influence, yet it exists in tension with the lived reality of those who labor, struggle, or face systemic barriers to advancement. Cultural and social life reflects these economic dynamics. The wealthy patronize theaters, concert halls, and opera houses, fostering a thriving arts scene that enhances both prestige and civic identity. Social clubs and salons provide spaces for networking, discussion, and decision-making, reinforcing class structures and social hierarchies. Meanwhile, immigrant communities cultivate their own cultural institutions, churches, schools, and clubs that preserve language, customs, and social cohesion. These spaces are vital to maintaining identity and community, offering both respite and resilience in the face of economic and social pressures. They also highlight the diversity and complexity of the urban population, where multiple cultures coexist, intersect, and occasionally collide within a single neighborhood. As midday approaches, one can observe the interactions between these different layers of society. Servants, clerks, and laborers traverse the city, often crossing paths with the elite they serve or support. Merchants and shopkeepers negotiate sales and deals, accommodating both wealthy patrons and working-class customers. Street performers, newspaper boys, and vendors create a living tapestry of sound, motion, and human interaction that defines the urban experience. Even in the apparent chaos, patterns emerge, routines, hierarchies, and social norms govern behavior, reinforcing both opportunity and limitation. The city itself becomes a stage upon which the dramas of the Gilded Age unfold, each individual, each family, each institution contributing to the larger story of a nation in flux. Education, too, plays a role in this complex landscape. The children of the elite attend private schools where they receive instruction in literature, languages, mathematics, and social etiquette, preparing them to inherit positions of influence. Public schools serve children from immigrant and working-class families, though they often struggle with overcrowding, underfunding, and limited resources. Despite these challenges, education is viewed as a path toward social mobility, offering knowledge, skills, and hope for a better future. In many communities, particularly among immigrant populations, education is deeply valued, seen as a means of preserving culture while adapting to the opportunities and demands of American society. Religious institutions also exert influence, shaping values, community cohesion, and social expectations. Churches, synagogues, and other places of worship offer not only spiritual guidance, but also social services, education, and a sense of belonging. The elite may attend formal congregations that reflect their wealth and status, while immigrant communities gather in modest, crowded spaces that serve as centers for both faith and cultural preservation. Religious leaders navigate the challenges of addressing both moral and social concerns, offering guidance that often intersects with questions of labor, reform, and civic responsibility. Throughout these hours, the paradox of the Gilded Age is everywhere evident. Wealth and power coexist with poverty and struggle. Opportunity and exploitation exist side by side. Progress and corruption intertwine. The decisions of a few shape the lives of many, yet individual initiative, resilience, and community bonds persist as forces that enable survival, adaptation, and aspiration. The tension between the glittering surface and the shadowed reality defines the era, creating a landscape of contrast that is as dramatic as it is instructive. As the morning moves toward midday, one begins to see the patterns of influence and consequence that define power in the Gilded Age. Political machines consolidate authority through strategic appointments, loyalty, and patronage. Industrial magnates expand their empires, influencing policy and controlling vital infrastructure. Laborers negotiate survival in an economy that rewards efficiency and productivity while offering minimal protection. Each action, each choice, each moment of negotiation contributes to a system that is at once dynamic, fragile, and profoundly consequential. The people of this era, whether wealthy or working class, navigate a complex world of opportunity and limitation. The rich cultivate influence, leisure, and social capital. The working poor endure hardships, striving for stability, security, and the hope of upward mobility. Immigrant communities maintain their heritage while adapting to the demands of urban life. Reformers and visionaries push against the currents of corruption and inequality, advocating for fairness, justice, and progress. Every day, every hour, these forces intersect, shaping the evolving story of America. And as the morning reaches its zenith, one can step back and observe the city as a living embodiment of the paradoxes of the Gilded Age. Streets, offices, factories, homes, and public spaces are all interconnected nodes within a larger system of wealth, influence, and power. The interplay of ambition, labor, innovation, and corruption defines not just the city, but the nation itself. In this dynamic, tumultuous, and deeply human landscape, the lessons of the Gilded Age are clear. Prosperity without equity is fragile, power without accountability is dangerous, and progress without humanity is incomplete. As the day moves forward in the 1880s, the rhythm of American life begins to shift. Morning transitions into a bustling mid-morning and early afternoon, and with it comes the pulse of labor, industry, and the stirrings of social transformation. Factories clamor with activity, marketplaces swell with voices, and communities throughout cities and towns negotiate their existence within an economy that is simultaneously promising and unforgiving. In this era, the Gilded Age is defined not only by wealth and corruption, but also by the emergence of a working class, whose labor fuels the engines of industry, and whose collective voice begins to shape the course of the nation. Factories, at the heart of industrialization, dominate urban life. Massive brick buildings rise from streets and alleys, their facades punctuated with tall windows, thick smokestacks, and the occasional signage of proprietors. Inside, the air is thick with heat, dust, oil, and the faint scent of sweat, a constant reminder of human effort driving mechanical progress. Steam-powered machines hiss, clank, and whir, their rhythms filling every corner of the industrial hall with deafening intensity. The factory floor is a symphony of motion, hands grasping tools, feet moving between workstations, and eyes scanning the movements of machinery to ensure that every cog and lever functions in harmony. The work is repetitive and demanding, yet it is necessary. Without this labor, the textile that covers a table, the shoes on a child's feet, the iron rails that carry trains, and the utensils in kitchens across the country would not exist. Workers come in every shape, size, and origin, but a large proportion are immigrants who have arrived from Ireland, Germany, Italy, Poland, and Eastern Europe. Each carries a story, families who fled famine, persecution, or political unrest, arriving with dreams of opportunity and survival in a new world. Many speak limited English, navigate unfamiliar laws, and face cultural prejudices, yet they bring resilience, ingenuity, and a willingness to endure harsh conditions in pursuit of security. Children, often as young as 6 or 7, assist in factories, performing delicate or repetitive tasks that require small hands and nimble fingers. Their labor contributes to the household income, yet it comes at the cost of education, leisure, and the carefree joys of childhood. The factory, in this sense, is both a space of opportunity and exploitation, a microcosm of the promises and contradictions of the industrial age. The rhythm of labor is relentless. Supervisors pace the aisles, issuing instructions, reprimanding those who lag, and monitoring the pace of production. Machines are unforgiving, and accidents are frequent. Fingers are crushed, backs strained, and lungs filled with dust and smoke, yet there is little recourse. Few protections exist, and the prevailing belief in individual responsibility often outweighs concern for worker welfare. Within these confines, however, solidarity emerges. Immigrant groups form networks of mutual aid, sharing knowledge, resources, and support. They teach each other the rhythms of work, the intricacies of machinery, and the subtleties of negotiation with supervisors. Friendships are forged amid adversity, providing emotional sustenance and a sense of community in an otherwise impersonal industrial world. Outside the factory walls, the city continues its ceaseless motion. Streets are packed with vendors, delivery carts, streetcars, and pedestrians navigating the uneven cobblestones. The markets swell with the goods of industry, agriculture, and global trade. Merchants peddle fruits, vegetables, textiles, and household goods, offering both necessity and luxury to customers whose means vary dramatically. Immigrant neighborhoods cluster around marketplaces that cater to their tastes, offering foods, fabrics, and tools reminiscent of the old world. These streets are not only economic centers but also spaces of social interaction, cultural preservation, and adaptation, where languages mix, music drifts from windows, and children weave between adults in playful abandon. Labor unions, though still nascent in many sectors, begin to assert themselves as powerful forces advocating for workers' rights. Strikes, petitions, and collective bargaining emerge as tools for challenging unfair practices, unsafe conditions, and inadequate wages. In cities like New York, Chicago, and Pittsburgh, workers gather in halls, parks, and streets to organize, to strategize, and to raise their voices. Leaders emerge, often charismatic immigrants or socially conscious activists, who articulate the grievances of laborers and mobilize collective action. The response from factory owners and political authorities is often harsh. Strikes are broken by hired guards, protests suppressed, and leaders targeted. Yet the determination of workers grows stronger, laying the foundation for labor rights movements that will extend far beyond the Gilded Age. Innovation and technological advancement flourish alongside this labor unrest. Factories experiment with new machinery to increase productivity, streamline production, and reduce costs. Steam power, mechanical looms, and assembly line techniques are introduced in various industries, revolutionizing the speed and scale of manufacturing. Telegraphs, and in some regions the early telephone networks, enable faster communication, connecting merchants, investors, and industrialists in ways previously unimaginable. Railroads expand, linking raw materials with factories and finished goods with markets, transforming the geography of trade and labor. Innovations are celebrated publicly as triumphs of human ingenuity, yet they also intensify the demands placed on workers, heightening the pace of labor, reducing the need for skilled artisans, and creating tension between efficiency and human welfare. Social change emerges alongside these economic and technological shifts. The women's suffrage movement gains momentum, advocating for the right to vote, legal protections, and access to education and professional opportunities. Activists speak in lecture halls, publish articles, and organize petitions, often facing ridicule, harassment, and exclusion from mainstream society. Yet their persistence gradually reshapes public perception, laying the groundwork for reforms that will gain traction in the decades to follow. Similarly, temperance advocates campaign against alcohol consumption, arguing that it fuels poverty, domestic violence, and social instability. Their efforts intertwine with moral, religious, and social movements, reflecting the diverse concerns and values of the era. Education becomes both a tool and a battleground for social change. Public schools, often overcrowded and underfunded, strive to provide basic literacy, numeracy, and moral instruction to children from working-class and immigrant families. These schools also serve as spaces where American values are taught and adapted, blending the ideals of the new country with the cultural heritage of immigrant populations. Private schools, meanwhile, cater to the elite, instilling not only knowledge but also social etiquette, cultural refinement, and the skills necessary to navigate positions of influence. Libraries, lecture halls, and cultural institutions offer opportunities for self-improvement, intellectual engagement, and civic participation, forming the backbone of a society increasingly aware of the power of knowledge and education in shaping individual and collective destiny. In the streets, cultural life blossoms in diverse and vibrant ways. Street performers entertain passers-by, musicians play on street corners or in modest theaters, and small newspapers circulate stories of local events, global news, and social commentary. These interactions foster a sense of community and shared experience, even in the midst of economic hardship. Markets, churches, and social clubs serve as hubs for communication, mutual aid, and cultural preservation, allowing immigrant communities to maintain identity while negotiating integration into broader American society. The city itself becomes a living classroom where adaptation, creativity, and resilience are taught and learned daily. Labor, however, is never purely mechanical or passive. Workers engage in constant negotiation with both the demands of machinery and the expectations of supervisors. Subtle forms of resistance, such as slowing the pace of work, organizing informal networks, or covertly exchanging information, allow individuals to assert agency even in constrained circumstances. These acts, while small, reflect a broader understanding of labor as both a commodity and a form of power. The collective awareness of shared conditions, the recognition of inequality, and the aspiration for justice create the social and moral undercurrents that will eventually drive significant reforms in labor rights, workplace safety, and economic policy. Immigrant women face particular challenges in this environment. Many are employed in textile factories, garment workshops, or domestic service, balancing the demands of work with responsibilities for childcare, household management, and community engagement. Their labor is essential both economically and socially, yet often undervalued, underpaid, and overlooked. Women organize in social clubs, mutual aid societies, and labor associations, advocating for better working conditions, education, and recognition of their contributions. These efforts, combined with the broader suffrage movement, signal a gradual but profound shift in the social fabric, as women assert influence over public and private spheres alike. Technological change reshapes not only labor, but also daily life in broader society. Railroads, telegraphs, and the emerging telephone networks accelerate communication and commerce, enabling coordination across cities, states, and regions. Factories adopt steam engines and more sophisticated machinery, increasing efficiency but also imposing new demands on workers. Urban infrastructure, including gas lighting, sanitation systems, and streetcar lines, transforms the experience of the city, yet uneven distribution of these services underscores the persistent inequalities of the era. Neighborhoods of wealth enjoy clean streets, reliable transport, and cultural amenities, while working-class districts contend with overcrowding, poor sanitation, and limited access to education or health care. Amid these changes, social consciousness begins to take root. Reformers, journalists, and civic leaders highlight the disparities and abuses of the industrial system, advocating for improvements in labor conditions, housing, education, and public health. These efforts are met with resistance from entrenched interests, but gain traction over time, laying the groundwork for progressive reforms in the coming decades. The tensions between industrial growth, human welfare, and social justice define not only the labor landscape, but also the moral and political discourse of the era. By mid-afternoon, the city is a complex web of activity, energy, and transformation. Factories continue their ceaseless production, markets bustle with negotiation and trade, schools and cultural institutions educate and inspire, and communities navigate the intertwined pressures of work, family, and survival. The interplay between labor, innovation, and social change is evident everywhere, in the machinery that drives production, in the hands that operate it, in the voices that demand fairness, and in the institutions that seek to balance profit with human dignity. The collective experience of labor in the Gilded Age is both exhausting and empowering. Workers endure physical hardship, economic insecurity, and social marginalization, yet they also cultivate skills, resilience, and solidarity. Communities of immigrants, women, and the working class assert agency, build networks of support, and participate in social and political movements that challenge inequities and demand recognition. These dynamics reflect a society in flux, negotiating the promises and perils of industrialization, urbanization, and modernity. Cultural and intellectual life intertwines with labor and innovation. Libraries, lecture halls, and civic organizations provide spaces for learning, discussion, and debate. Public lectures cover topics ranging from science and technology to philosophy and social reform. Newspapers circulate ideas, critique injustice, and celebrate achievement. These avenues of education and cultural engagement offer tools for empowerment, providing knowledge, context, and perspective to those navigating the rapid changes of the industrial era. The afternoon closes with an awareness of both accomplishment and ongoing struggle. Factories continue to hum, markets remain vibrant, and neighborhoods pulse with life. Laborers, immigrants, and reformers engage with the opportunities and challenges of the day, balancing survival, aspiration, and social responsibility. Innovation drives progress, yet it also heightens expectations and pressures. Social change emerges through collective action, advocacy, and cultural engagement, signaling the evolution of an increasingly conscious and organized society. The Gilded Age, in this sense, is a time of dualities. Progress and exploitation coexist, wealth and poverty intersect, and labor and innovation are inseparable. Social change emerges organically, driven by necessity, injustice, and hope. In these mid-afternoon hours, one can observe the forces that will shape modern America, the resilience of workers, the ingenuity of innovators, the organization of reformers, and the enduring spirit of communities striving for a better life. Every action, every movement, every decision contributes to a larger narrative. Factories produce not just goods, but social dynamics. Railroads and telegraphs not only connect cities, but link communities in new ways. Education and cultural engagement cultivate understanding, aspiration, and agency. Together, these forces defined life in the Gilded Age, capturing both the brilliance and complexity of a society on the brink of profound transformation. The interplay of labor, innovation, and social change is relentless, shaping not only the immediate experiences of men, women, and children, but also the broader trajectory of the nation. By witnessing the intricate dance of these forces, one gains insight into the challenges and possibilities of the era, appreciating the courage, ingenuity, and perseverance that define the human spirit amid industrial, social, and economic upheaval. As the sun climbs higher in the sky, the city of New York and other American urban centers take on a rhythm that is at once orderly and chaotic, a vivid manifestation of the disparities that define the Gilded Age. Midday in the 1880s is a period when contrasts between wealth and poverty, opportunity and struggle, and progress and exploitation become most apparent. It is during these hours that the glittering facade of prosperity stands in sharp relief against the shadowed reality of the urban working class, revealing a society defined by both ambition and deprivation. The streets of the city are alive with movement, a continuous dance of commerce, labor, and social interaction. In the more affluent neighborhoods, the sun reflects off the polished stone facades of mansions and row houses. Carriages with gleaming wheels and lacquered wood traverse the streets, carrying women in elaborately tailored dresses, men in stiff collars and vests, and children escorted by governesses. The air is filled with the scent of freshly baked bread, imported coffee, and flowers from manicured gardens. These neighborhoods are punctuated by parks and squares, providing spaces for leisure, promenading, and social interaction, where the elite display not only wealth but also taste, refinement, and cultural sophistication. Inside these homes, the morning routines of the affluent continue seamlessly into midday. Breakfast transitions into brunch or early lunch, often served in rooms adorned with fine china, polished silverware, and artworks imported from Europe. Domestic staff, maids, cooks, butlers, and footmen, move efficiently to prepare meals, maintain the household, and ensure that every aspect of daily life is meticulously managed. Children are instructed in reading, writing, arithmetic, and etiquette, often under the watchful eye of governesses or tutors. Discussions at the breakfast or dining table revolve around investments, business opportunities, stock markets, railroad expansions, and philanthropic endeavors, reflecting the integration of wealth, influence, and social expectation. These hours are not merely about sustenance, but about reinforcing social hierarchy, cultural identity, and personal ambition. Just a few streets away, the contrast could not be more striking. Tenement districts rise like brick and stone labyrinths, their walls stained by soot, smoke, and neglect. Narrow alleys, separate buildings crowded with families, each living in spaces that would scarcely be considered adequate for a single household in wealthier neighborhoods. The midday light filters weakly through narrow windows, casting long shadows across rooms that serve as kitchen, bedroom, and sitting area all in one. Families gather around a small stove preparing whatever food is available. Often this consists of bread, beans, or whatever vegetables can be purchased with the day's earnings. The sounds of children playing, crying, or assisting with chores intermingle with the voices of parents calling out instructions, negotiating conflicts, or coordinating the day's labor. The air carries the odors of cooking, sweat, and refuse, a pungent reminder of both necessity and deprivation. In the marketplaces that serve these neighborhoods, the vibrancy of life is equally striking, albeit under very different circumstances than in affluent districts. Vendors shout the prices of vegetables, meat, fish, and household goods, their voices competing with the cries of street children, the clatter of carts, and the movement of pedestrians. Haggling is not merely economic but a survival strategy, with families stretching every penny to meet the demands of rent, food, clothing, and medical needs. Immigrant communities create enclaves that preserve the languages, foods, and customs of their homelands. Italian markets overflow with fresh pasta, cured meats, and spices, while Jewish neighborhoods feature bakeries and delis, each offering both sustenance and cultural continuity. These spaces are at once lively, chaotic, and essential, providing both economic and social sustenance to communities navigating the pressures of urban life. The factory districts provide yet another lens through which the contrast of the Gilded Age is visible. By midday, the production floor is in full swing, with machines operating at maximum capacity. Steam whistles, signal brakes, the clatter of looms and presses forms a constant background noise, and the air is heavy with dust and heat. Immigrant laborers, men, women, and even children, continue their tasks with precision and endurance. The wages earned, though minimal, are vital to the survival of households, funding food, rent, and basic necessities. The working conditions are harsh, injuries are common, ventilation is poor, and exhaustion is a constant companion. Yet within these factories, a sense of community and resilience develops. Workers share knowledge, help one another navigate the machines, and form informal networks of support that provide both practical assistance and emotional sustenance. Laborers also increasingly assert their collective voice. By the 1880s, the labor movement in America is gaining momentum, with organizations forming to advocate for safer conditions, shorter hours, and fair wages. Strikes, petitions, and public demonstrations, while risky and sometimes met with forceful suppression, begin to reshape the relationship between employer and employee. Workers recognize their shared strength and use it to challenge the inequalities inherent in industrial society. These efforts are a testament to human determination, resilience, and the capacity to organize even under conditions of extreme pressure. The disparity between wealth and poverty is further highlighted by the access to culture and leisure. In affluent districts, theaters, opera houses, and concert halls host performances that attract the city's elite. Attending such events is not only an opportunity for entertainment, but also a statement of status, education, and taste. Fashionable gatherings, literary salons, and art exhibitions reinforce social networks, cultivate influence, and display both wealth and refinement. Meanwhile, for working-class neighborhoods, leisure is limited to brief moments in public squares, small social gatherings within community centers, or participation in ethnic cultural traditions that provide comfort, continuity, and a sense of identity. The opportunities for leisure, education, and cultural engagement are therefore sharply divided, reflecting the broader inequalities that define daily life. Housing conditions further emphasize the gap between classes. In the wealthy districts, homes feature multiple rooms, private bathrooms, heating systems, and spaces dedicated to both leisure and work. Gardens, courtyards, and balconies provide outdoor space for relaxation, play, and socializing. Sanitation systems, reliable water supply, and domestic staff ensure a level of comfort that protects health and enhances quality of life. Conversely, tenement buildings are cramped, often housing several families in a single unit, with shared or insufficient facilities. Ventilation is poor, light is minimal, and sanitation is inadequate, contributing to the spread of disease and a lower life expectancy for residents. These physical conditions are a constant reminder of the inequities that define the era, underscoring the stark contrast between opportunity and deprivation, health and vulnerability, comfort and hardship. Public services, or the lack thereof, further accentuate the differences between neighborhoods. Affluent districts benefit from well-paved streets, reliable street lighting, and municipal services that maintain cleanliness and order. Tenement districts, in contrast, often contend with garbage accumulating in alleys, irregular or unsafe water supplies, and streets crowded with carts, animals, and pedestrians navigating uneven cobblestones. These disparities are not merely aesthetic, they have profound implications for health, safety, and the overall quality of life of residents. Children in poorer neighborhoods are exposed to hazards that wealthier children never encounter, shaping life experiences, opportunities, and outcomes from a very young age. The midday contrasts extend to education and opportunity. Children from affluent families attend private schools, often staffed with tutors and educators trained in a variety of subjects, from mathematics and science to literature, arts, and languages. Their education is both rigorous and expansive, designed to prepare them for positions of influence in business, politics, and society. In working-class and immigrant neighborhoods, public schools struggle to accommodate the number of children, with limited resources, overcrowded classrooms, and inconsistent attendance due to child labor demands. Despite these challenges, education is valued as a pathway to upward mobility, offering knowledge, skills, and hope for future generations. Parents in these communities make extraordinary efforts to support schooling, often sacrificing income, time, or comfort to ensure that children have a chance at a better life. Healthcare and access to medical services also reflect this disparity. Wealthy families have private physicians, access to the latest medical treatments, and the means to maintain hygiene and nutrition that support long-term well-being. Poorer residents, in contrast, often rely on charitable hospitals, untrained practitioners, or community remedies. Illnesses such as tuberculosis, cholera, and influenza are more prevalent in overcrowded neighborhoods, exacerbated by poor sanitation and limited resources. The risk of premature death, chronic illness, and physical disability is far higher for those living in poverty, creating a tangible divide between the life experiences of the wealthy and the working class. Work and leisure, health and education, housing and sanitation, all are facets of the same complex reality. America in the 1880s is a nation of extremes. Midday illuminates these extremes most vividly. In the same urban space, one can witness the leisurely stroll of a wealthy woman past a bustling market filled with immigrants bargaining for food, or observe children in ornate carriages while others work at looms or in factories. The sensory experiences, the sights, sounds, smells, and textures, underscore the stark social, economic, and cultural divides that define life during the Gilded Age. Religious institutions offer another layer of contrast. Affluent families may attend large, architecturally impressive churches with ornate interiors, organ music, and well-trained choirs, reinforcing both spiritual practice and social hierarchy. In working-class neighborhoods, churches and synagogues serve multiple purposes: places of worship, community gathering spaces, and centers for education and support. Religious leaders in these areas often play a critical role in addressing the immediate needs of the community, from charity to guidance, blending spiritual care with practical assistance. These institutions are both cultural anchors and social safety nets, reflecting the ingenuity and resilience of communities navigating the challenges of industrial urban life. By mid-afternoon, the dynamic of the city is firmly established. Carriages, carts, and streetcars crisscross avenues. Markets remain vibrant hubs of exchange. Factories continue their relentless hum of production. The disparities between the rich and the poor, while striking in the morning, are now fully apparent. Opportunities, comfort, health, education, and leisure are distributed unevenly, shaped by birth, wealth, and social standing. Yet amid these contrasts, human ingenuity, resilience, and aspiration flourish in every neighborhood, providing hope, adaptation, and cultural richness that persist despite economic and social inequality. Even within the disparities, subtle forms of interaction occur that bind the urban landscape together. Wealthy patrons rely on laborers, artisans, and domestic staff to maintain their lifestyles. Markets, streets, and neighborhoods of the working class provide goods, services, and cultural exchange that sustain the city's ecosystem. Religious institutions, social clubs, and mutual aid societies create overlapping networks that connect disparate populations in ways both visible and invisible. These interactions are daily reminders that even in a world of extremes, human connection, cooperation, and shared experience persist, shaping the texture of urban life and the moral landscape of society. The contrasts of midday also illuminate the aspirations of those living in poverty. Families, workers, and children navigate their circumstances with determination, ingenuity, and foresight. Every purchase, every decision, every hour of labor is carefully considered and strategically allocated. Education, though limited, is pursued with vigor. Social engagement, though constrained, is meaningful. Cultural traditions, though adapted, are preserved. The human capacity for adaptation, resilience, and hope is evident in every alley, market, and tenement courtyard, forming a counterpoint to the wealth and leisure displayed just blocks away. By observing the city during these hours, one understands that the Gilded Age is defined not merely by wealth or industry, but by the contrasts and tensions that shape daily life. Opportunity and struggle coexist in immediate proximity. Elegance and deprivation share the same air. Progress and inequity are inseparable. The midday light, falling on both polished stone and soot-stained brick, illuminates these contrasts, offering a vivid portrait of the complex social, economic, and moral realities of the era. The midday hours of the Gilded Age reveal the stark truth: the glitter of prosperity cannot obscure the shadows of inequality. Yet within these shadows, resilience, innovation, and human agency persist. Laborers negotiate survival, immigrants build community, women assert social influence, and children absorb lessons that will shape future generations. These dynamics are not merely background details, they are central to the story of America in the 1880s, capturing the tensions, contradictions, and possibilities that define the era. In these hours, the city itself becomes a living narrative, a stage on which the drama of the Gilded Age unfolds. The sights, sounds, and rhythms of midday life reveal the moral, economic, and social contours of the era, illustrating the profound divides that coexist with innovation, progress, and human aspiration. From the elegant homes and manicured parks to the crowded tenements and bustling markets, the contrasts of midday illuminate the choices, challenges, and resilience that define life in 1880s America. Even as the sun moves westward, casting longer shadows across streets, alleys, and avenues, the disparities remain vivid. Wealth and poverty, opportunity and deprivation, labor and leisure, all coexist in a fragile balance, shaping the experiences of millions of Americans. These contrasts are neither static nor inevitable. They are the product of policy, circumstance, innovation, and human agency. In observing them, one gains a deeper understanding of the forces that shape society, economy, and culture in the Gilded Age, and the enduring legacy that these forces leave for future generations. As the sun begins its slow descent toward the western horizon, casting a warm golden glow across the streets, buildings, and waterways of America's growing cities, a new rhythm emerges in the daily life of the Gilded Age. Evening marks a transition. The relentless activity of the factories begins to ease, markets close for the day, and the streets, once bustling with the urgency of business, labor, and commerce, take on a more contemplative, reflective quality. The city exhales, yet it does not rest. In this time one witnesses the human spirit in motion, the joys, struggles, aspirations, and quiet triumphs that shape life after a long day of labor, negotiation, and survival. In the wealthier districts, evening is a time of leisure, culture, and social display. Mansions and row houses, their facades gleaming in the soft twilight, begin to illuminate from within as gas lamps flicker to life. The polished interiors reveal families and guests gathered in drawing rooms and dining halls, where dinner is served with ceremonial care. Silver gleams, crystal sparkles, and the aroma of roasted meats, fresh vegetables, and baked breads fills the air. Conversation flows freely, ranging from the latest theatrical performances and art exhibitions to business deals, political developments, and international news. Children are instructed, entertained, or escorted to evening lessons, their development carefully nurtured to prepare them for the roles they are expected to inherit in society. This evening is not merely for sustenance, but for reinforcement of social bonds, cultivation of knowledge, and demonstration of status. Music from pianos, string quartets, or imported phonographs enhances the ambience, adding an artistic layer to the cultivated elegance of affluent life. Outside these private walls, the streets of wealthier neighborhoods are orderly, well-lit, and navigable. Carriages glide along the avenues, ferried by drivers who have spent the day waiting for passengers or performing errands. Gas lamps illuminate sidewalks, casting a soft glow on the polished shoes and flowing dresses of those who stroll or return from social engagements. Parks and squares offer spaces for promenading, reflection, and interaction, reinforcing both public presence and social expectation. Leisure in these areas is a structured, visible, and performative aspect of life, designed to reflect refinement, stability, and engagement with culture, commerce, and society at large. In stark contrast, the working-class neighborhoods, tenements, and immigrant districts experience evening as a time of both relief and persistent challenge. Families gather in cramped apartments, often in spaces that serve simultaneously as kitchen, bedroom, and living area. The day's labor, school attendance, or errands are finally paused, offering a brief period to rest, eat, and converse. Meals are modest but carefully prepared, typically consisting of bread, soups, beans, and whatever vegetables or scraps can be afforded. Cooking is a communal, family-centered activity requiring cooperation, ingenuity, and careful allocation of resources. The aroma of simple fare mingles with the faint sense of coal smoke and sanitation challenges, creating a sensory environment that is distinctly urban, vibrant, and humanly charged. Children, after long hours in factories, workshops, schools, or assisting with family chores, find moments of play and exploration. In narrow alleys, courtyards, and streets, they run, chase, and invent games that require little more than imagination and collaboration. Their laughter contrasts with the harsher sounds of work or negotiation, punctuating the evening with energy, spontaneity, and joy. Even amid limited resources, play remains a critical outlet, shaping social skills, creativity, and resilience. Parents, while tired and constrained by the demands of labor, supervise, guide, and nurture, balancing immediate survival with long-term aspirations for their children. Religious and cultural life thrives during these hours, particularly in working-class and immigrant communities. Churches, synagogues, and other places of worship hold evening services, providing spiritual guidance, moral instruction, and social cohesion. Choirs sing hymns, prayers are intoned, and sermons address both individual virtue and collective responsibility. These gatherings are more than spiritual observances, they are centers of community life, offering mutual support, education, and a sense of belonging. Religious leaders often act as mediators, advocates, and organizers, responding to both the spiritual and material needs of congregants. Within these spaces, individuals find comfort, guidance, and inspiration, strengthening communal bonds and reinforcing identity amid the pressures of urban life. Markets and streets, though quieter than during the bustling day, remain active into the evening. Street vendors, small shopkeepers, and service providers cater to those finishing work, running errands, or preparing for evening gatherings. The glow of lanterns and oil lamps illuminates faces, products, and signage, creating a vibrant nocturnal tapestry that contrasts with both the structured elegance of affluent districts and the starkness of industrial facilities. These spaces are alive with negotiation, human interaction, and cultural expression, reflecting the resilience, creativity, and adaptability of those navigating daily challenges. Factories, for their part, often continue operations into the evening. The hum of machinery persists, accompanied by the rhythmic clatter of tools, the hiss of steam, and the occasional whistle signaling shift changes or breaks. Evening shifts are staffed by workers who either could not obtain employment during standard hours or who seek additional income to meet the growing demands of family, rent, and daily survival. The labor remains grueling. Noise, heat, dust, and the mechanical precision required take both physical and mental tolls. Yet within these spaces, solidarity persists. Workers assist one another, exchange tips, and maintain informal networks that provide not only practical support, but also emotional resilience. The factory, even at this hour, is both a site of exploitation and a community in miniature, reflecting broader social dynamics of power, cooperation, and survival. Across the urban landscape, the arts and entertainment emerge as a defining feature of evening life, particularly for those with disposable income or access to cultural institutions. Theaters showcase plays that range from high drama to popular farce, operas enchant with complex musical compositions, and concert halls present symphonies that reflect both technical mastery and aesthetic refinement. Patrons dress formally, socializing in lobbies and foyers, while performers engage in rehearsals, performances, and tours that demand both skill and endurance. For the working class, entertainment is more modest but equally vital. Street performers, traveling circuses, communal dances, and storytelling events offer respite, cultural continuity, and shared joy. Music, song, and storytelling serve as both escape and education, reinforcing values, history, and identity in accessible, emotionally resonant ways. The evening also provides a window into the aspirations and dreams of individuals across social strata. In affluent homes, conversations may center on inheritance, education, social alliances, or philanthropic efforts, reflecting a worldview shaped by security, opportunity, and influence. Children are guided toward careers, marriages, and social roles that reinforce existing hierarchies while providing personal advancement. In contrast, working-class families focus on immediate survival and incremental progress. Evening discussions often revolve around wages, rent, household management, health, education for children, and the hope of improving circumstances. Letters, newspapers, and community meetings disseminate information and inspiration, connecting individuals to broader social, political, and economic realities. Dreams of upward mobility, education, property ownership, and social recognition animate these discussions, infusing daily life with purpose and aspiration even amid hardship. Public spaces, parks, squares, and waterfronts serve as sites of reflection, recreation, and social interaction during the evening hours. Affluent citizens stroll, socialize, and engage in recreational activity, their presence both a display of status and an exercise in leisure. Working-class residents and immigrants use these spaces for informal gatherings, communal play, and cultural events. Streetlights, lanterns, and the waning daylight create atmospheres of intimacy, vibrancy, and social negotiation. The city itself becomes a stage where human experience unfolds in dynamic and interwoven ways, reflecting the complexity, contradictions, and vitality of urban life in the Gilded Age. Cultural and educational pursuits extend into the evening as well. Libraries, lecture halls, and civic centers host events ranging from scientific demonstrations to moral lectures, poetry readings, and debates on social reform. For those with access, these venues provide opportunities to acquire knowledge, engage with ideas, and participate in civic life. For others, informal gatherings in homes, community centers, or religious institutions fulfill similar roles, offering education, dialogue, and cultural enrichment within accessible and familiar contexts. The pursuit of knowledge, culture, and self-improvement is therefore not confined to wealthier classes, but is a shared aspiration that permeates multiple layers of society, reflecting human curiosity, resilience, and ambition. As night deepens, the laboring population returns home or to communal lodging, concluding shifts that may have lasted 12 or more hours. Fatigue is universal, yet so too is determination. Families share meals, recount the day's events, and plan for the challenges of tomorrow. Stories of small victories, kindnesses, and communal support circulate, reinforcing social bonds and providing emotional sustenance. These evenings are moments of rest, reflection, and preparation, balancing the relentless demands of work with the human need for connection, comfort, and hope. The Gilded Age is also a time of moral and social reflection during these hours. Discussions of temperance, philanthropy, social reform, and civic responsibility circulate among both elite and working-class populations. Reformers, often motivated by religious conviction, social conscience, or political ambition, work to address the inequities and injustices revealed in daily life. Public lectures, newspaper articles, and informal gatherings critique labor conditions, urban sanitation, child welfare, and corruption, fostering dialogue and awareness that transcends class boundaries. These reflections are both a response to immediate circumstances and a vision for a better, more equitable society, highlighting the moral and ethical dimensions of urban and industrial life. Evening shadows illuminate both the beauty and the harsh realities of the Gilded Age. Contrast between polished elegance and urban deprivation is stark. Gaslit avenues and opulent dining rooms coexist alongside soot-stained alleys and crowded tenements. Yet these contrasts also reveal resilience, creativity, and the human capacity to adapt. Immigrant communities maintain cultural traditions while embracing new opportunities. Laborers negotiate survival and solidarity. Children find joy and education in constrained spaces, and the wealthy cultivate culture, philanthropy, and social influence. Together, these dynamics form a mosaic that is vibrant, complex, and profoundly human. As the city settles into the quiet hum of night, reflective spaces emerge. In private homes, individuals contemplate the day's successes and failures, opportunities and setbacks, joys and sorrows. In tenements, families recount stories, nurture children, and discuss the practicalities of survival. Across neighborhoods, shared rituals, prayers, songs, readings, and meals create continuity and meaning, reinforcing the connections that sustain life. These moments, while often overlooked in historical narratives, are central to understanding the lived experience of the Gilded Age, the endurance of hope, the cultivation of community, and the human capacity to find meaning amidst challenge. Finally, the evening invites dreams of a future yet to be realized. Children imagine possibilities beyond the confines of their immediate environment, aspiring to education, travel, trade, or social recognition. Adults reflect on strategies to improve livelihoods, secure stability, and provide opportunities for the next generation. Social reformers envision a society with greater equity, justice, and opportunity. Innovators, entrepreneurs, and industrialists anticipate new ventures, markets, and advancements. The interplay of imagination, aspiration, and reflection underscores the dynamic potential of the era, revealing both the promise and responsibility inherent in human effort and social organization. By the late hours of night, the city's energy diminishes, but it does not disappear. Gas lamps glow softly along avenues, factories quiet their machinery, and street sounds fade into intermittent footsteps, carriage wheels, and the occasional voice. Yet life continues in small, intimate spaces. In tenements, families huddle around modest stoves. In affluent homes, conversations linger over wine or tea. In cultural and religious institutions, night programs conclude with reflection, song, or study. Even as darkness falls, the patterns, aspirations, and struggles of the day remain alive in memory, shaping the rhythm of tomorrow. The evening of the Gilded Age, then, is both a period of rest and reflection, of leisure and labor, of contrast and continuity. It illuminates the disparities and inequalities that define society, yet it also reveals resilience, ingenuity, community, and hope. Through the lens of evening life, one can witness the moral, social, and cultural dimensions of the era, understanding the human experience in all its complexity, from opulence to deprivation, from aspiration to reflection, and from labor to leisure. In these hours, the city breathes, pulsates, and dreams. Streets, tenements, theaters, homes, and institutions form a living mosaic, revealing both the brilliance and the shadows of the Gilded Age. Observing evening life provides insight into the enduring themes of human experience, ambition, resilience, community, creativity, and moral reflection. It reminds us that even amid extremes of wealth and poverty, the human spirit finds ways to adapt, aspire, and persevere, crafting lives of meaning, connection, and hope within the structures of an evolving society. The Gilded Age, when viewed through the lens of evening, becomes a portrait of contrasts and continuities. Luxury and deprivation, labor and leisure, aspiration and reflection, progress and inequity all converge to shape the lived reality of millions. Yet it is also a period of vitality, creativity, and vision, as individuals navigate challenges, cultivate relationships, and imagine futures beyond the immediate constraints of circumstance. Evening life crystallizes these dynamics, offering both a conclusion to the day and a prelude to the possibilities of tomorrow. In the quiet moments before sleep, families, workers, children, and elites alike engage in reflection, contemplation, and anticipation. Meals are consumed, tasks concluded, lessons reviewed, and strategies for the coming day discussed. Dreams and imagination carry the promise of mobility, growth, and discovery. Stories are told, histories preserved, and knowledge transmitted across generations. In these intimate spaces, one witnesses the endurance of culture, community, and human aspiration, even in the shadow of social, economic, and moral inequalities. By the time darkness fully envelops the city, the heartbeat of the Gilded Age remains palpable. The contrast between wealth and poverty, leisure and labor, culture and survival continues to define experience. Yet in every home, alley, street, and public space, the human spirit asserts itself, navigating the realities of the era with resilience, imagination, and determination. Evening life. In 1880s, America is a testament to the complexities of society, the endurance of hope, and the ongoing narrative of a nation in flux. As the city descends fully into night, a profound transformation takes place. The clamor of commerce and the ceaseless hum of factories begin to fade, leaving behind a quieter, more contemplative rhythm that reveals the hidden textures of urban life in the Gilded Age. Nightfall is neither a cessation nor a pause. Rather, it is a time for reflection, legacy, and the subtle continuation of human endeavor. The streets are dimly lit by gas lamps and the occasional flicker of lanterns, casting long shadows that bend over cobblestone alleys, tenement facades, and grand avenues alike. The interplay of light and darkness mirrors the social contrasts of the era, the opulence of wealth side by side with the stark realities of poverty, the progress of innovation against the enduring weight of inequality, the daily routines of millions shaped by labor, culture, and aspiration. In the wealthy districts, evening formalities give way to quiet introspection. Drawing rooms that earlier hosted lively conversation now hold families gathered in subdued conversation or reading by gaslight. Wealthy men and women reflect on the accomplishments and challenges of the day, discussing investments, social events, and future endeavors. Children, after hours of instruction, leisure, or music lessons, retreat to bedrooms, equipped with the comfort and security their families can afford. Staff move silently through halls, ensuring warmth, cleanliness, and security, performing tasks invisible yet essential to the maintenance of luxury. In these households, nightfall is a time of restoration, not merely of the body but of social order and aspiration, a private affirmation of the structures that enable comfort, stability, and influence. In tenement districts and working-class neighborhoods, nightfall presents a very different set of circumstances. Families return from long hours of labor, from factories, workshops, and domestic service, often exhausted, hungry, and still managing responsibilities for the household and children. Yet in this exhaustion, resilience and creativity persist. Meals are prepared with limited ingredients. Conversations focus on strategy, support, and the well-being of children, and small moments of joy emerge in storytelling, music, or playful interaction. Children, despite fatigue, find the time and space for imaginative play, inventing games with simple objects, or gathering in courtyards to chase shadows and weave stories. In these moments, the human spirit asserts itself, defying scarcity and hardship, transforming ordinary spaces into arenas of imagination, learning, and cultural continuity. Across the city, religious and community institutions continue to serve as anchors during nightfall. Churches, synagogues, and social halls host evening services, lectures, and gatherings, providing both spiritual guidance and practical support. Choirs, prayers, and sermons resonate in spaces lit by candlelight or lanterns, reinforcing communal bonds and offering reassurance amid uncertainty. Community leaders, often volunteers or local figures, distribute assistance, organize educational programs, and mediate disputes, ensuring that social cohesion is maintained even when formal oversight is limited. These institutions are particularly vital for immigrant communities who rely on them for cultural preservation, education, and a sense of belonging in an often indifferent or hostile urban environment. Factories, though quieter than in daylight hours, often remain active. Night shifts extend the operations of industries that require continuous production, from textiles to metalworks, and the workforce adapts accordingly. Laborers on these shifts navigate fatigue, darkness, and heightened danger, relying on skill, experience, and mutual support to maintain efficiency and safety. Supervisors monitor operations carefully, yet the human dimension persists. Workers form networks of assistance, exchange knowledge, and maintain informal systems of safety and camaraderie. Nighttime labor illuminates both the necessity of industrial production and the sacrifices demanded of those who sustain it, emphasizing the enduring tension between progress and human cost. Meanwhile, the streets themselves take on a dual character. In wealthier areas, the illumination of gas lamps and reflected light from polished windows creates a sense of order, safety, and predictability. Carriages occasionally glide along avenues, delivering families to evening engagements or returning from social calls. Sidewalks are patrolled, parks empty except for those seeking quiet reflection, and the sounds of leisure and conversation gradually give way to a hushed calm. In working-class and immigrant districts, streets are less orderly yet still vibrant. Children play until fatigue overtakes them, neighbors exchange news and advice, and the rhythms of communal life persist into the night. Lanterns and candles flicker through windows, illuminating the ingenuity and resilience required to navigate constrained spaces, limited resources, and complex social networks. Nightfall also highlights the intellectual and cultural dimensions of life in the Gilded Age. Public lectures, libraries, and cultural centers often host evening programs for those who can access them, covering topics from science and technology to literature, art, and social reform. For working-class and immigrant populations, informal gatherings in homes, religious institutions, or community halls serve similar purposes. Discussions, storytelling, and teaching create opportunities for self-improvement, cultural preservation, and intellectual engagement. These activities underscore the universality of curiosity, the human drive for knowledge, and the enduring desire to understand and shape the world, regardless of economic circumstance. Within these night hours, reflection becomes a central activity. Individuals of all social strata consider the implications of their day's work, their achievements, their failures, and their aspirations. Wealthy industrialists and financiers may contemplate expansions, investments, and social influence, balancing the accumulation of material wealth with public perception and societal expectations. Workers consider wages, family well-being, and strategies for incremental improvement, reflecting on both immediate necessities and long-term goals. Children imagine futures beyond the confines of their immediate environment, dreaming of education, travel, or careers, while parents plan the next day's labor, household management, and educational opportunities. Reflection during nightfall is both practical and aspirational, grounded in lived reality yet directed toward potential and hope. Social reformers and activists are particularly active in these hours, leveraging the relative quiet to strategize, organize, and write. Letters are drafted, petitions prepared, and plans for meetings formulated. Discussions address labor conditions, urban sanitation, child welfare, education, and moral reform, emphasizing the interplay between daily human experience and broader societal structures. Evening offers time for strategic thought and moral reflection, enabling individuals to reconcile immediate needs with long-term objectives and social conscience. These efforts, often invisible in daily chronicles, contribute to the slow but profound evolution of social awareness and policy that will shape the coming decades. Artistic and cultural production is also illuminated at night. Musicians rehearse, poets write, painters apply brush to canvas, and writers compose letters, essays, and fiction. For the wealthy, access to professional instruction, performance venues, and curated audiences amplifies artistic expression, fostering refinement and visibility. For working-class populations, creativity thrives in more modest, communal forms. Songs passed down through families, stories told in kitchens and courtyards, sketches and crafts created with available materials. These practices sustain cultural identity, transmit knowledge, and provide emotional and psychological solace. Art and creativity at night underscore the universality of expression, bridging differences in wealth, education, and opportunity. In terms of health and personal care, Nightfall brings a brief respite, but also underscores inequality. Affluent households maintain cleanliness, comfort, and medical oversight, providing both preventive and responsive care that supports long-term well-being. In contrast, poor families and immigrant communities contend with limited access to health care, exposure to disease, and the physical toll of labor, yet adapt through ingenuity, community support, and reliance on home remedies. Nighttime routines, bathing, tending to children, preparing meals, require both energy and discipline, highlighting the resilience and resourcefulness demanded by constrained circumstances. Nightfall also illuminates the moral and spiritual dimensions of the Gilded Age. Reflection, prayer, and contemplation provide individuals with a sense of order, guidance, and hope amid the turbulence of daily life. Ethical considerations, fairness in labor, stewardship of resources, care for family, and communal responsibility are considered more quietly, yet no less profoundly. Religious leaders, social reformers, and community figures shape moral discourse, advocating justice, compassion, and ethical engagement with society. These values permeate households, workplaces, and communal spaces, reinforcing cultural continuity and social cohesion. As darkness deepens, the city's rhythm slows, yet it never fully ceases. Night markets, bakeries, and essential services remain active, sustaining the city's infrastructure and economy. Street life, while less frenetic, continues in small-scale forms. Children return from play, neighbors exchange news, and individuals attend evening shifts or duties. The nocturnal environment reveals both vulnerability and resilience, illuminating the interplay of human endeavor, adaptation, and survival in the face of social, economic, and environmental challenges. Nightfall is also a time for historical reflection, for considering the broader trajectory of the Gilded Age. Individuals across social strata, whether consciously or through observation, recognize patterns of inequality, opportunity, progress, and struggle. Wealth and influence are concentrated, yet labor, ingenuity, and resilience persist in unexpected ways. Innovation and industrialization transform daily life, yet human endurance and cultural continuity provide stability and identity. These patterns are visible in domestic life, communal rituals, labor practices, artistic creation, and civic engagement, creating a multi-layered portrait of society at once dynamic and unequal. For children, Nightfall carries lessons as well as dreams. Bedtime stories, educational exercises, and parental guidance provide both knowledge and moral instruction. Even in the absence of formal schooling, children absorb social norms, values, and practical skills from observation and participation. Their dreams, shaped by both aspiration and imagination, anticipate possibilities beyond the immediate environment, embodying hope, resilience, and potential. The cultivation of these early experiences will influence social mobility, intellectual growth, and personal development, contributing to the future of families, communities, and society at large. In affluent homes, Nightfall reinforces continuity, expectation, and legacy. Heirs and heiresses are prepared for social, economic, and political roles they are likely to inherit, blending instruction, cultural exposure, and moral guidance. Discussions of philanthropy, cultural patronage, and civic engagement introduce the next generation to responsibilities tied to wealth, influence, and public perception. By contrast, in working class and immigrant households, Nightfall emphasizes preparation for survival, incremental improvement, and community support. Strategies for household management, education, and health are discussed quietly but thoughtfully, creating a foundation for resilience, agency, and potential advancement. As midnight approaches, the city is enveloped in a profound stillness, punctuated by occasional sounds, the distant whistle of a train, the footfalls of a late-night worker, the laughter of children returning from evening play, or the murmur of conversation in communal spaces. This quiet is both literal and metaphorical, offering time for reflection, consolidation of experience, and contemplation of both individual and collective lives. It is a time when the achievements, struggles, hopes, and fears of the day are integrated into personal and communal narratives, forming the basis for memory, aspiration, and social evolution. The legacy of the Gilded Age is particularly apparent at night. Every household, street, institution, and factory contributes to a complex tapestry of human experience, social interaction, and cultural transmission. Achievements in industry, commerce, art, education, and civic engagement coexist with challenges of inequality, exploitation, and vulnerability. Observing the city at night reveals these tensions and harmonies in stark relief, demonstrating both the enduring human capacity for creativity, resilience, and reflection, and the social structures that shape opportunity and constraint. Nightfall, therefore, is not merely an end to the day, but a lens through which the complexities, contradictions, and continuities of the Gilded Age can be understood. It is a time for reflection, moral consideration, cultural engagement, and imaginative aspiration. It captures both the extraordinary achievements and persistent struggles of a society in rapid transformation, revealing the human dimension that underlies historical narratives of wealth, labor, innovation, and inequality. As the city sleeps, a quiet rhythm persists in households, streets, and institutions. Laborers prepare for the next day, children dream of possibility, families nurture relationships, and communities maintain social cohesion. Cultural, religious, and intellectual practices continue to resonate, shaping values, transmitting knowledge, and reinforcing identity. The cycles of work, leisure, reflection, and aspiration repeat, connecting individuals across space and time, creating continuity in the midst of change. The night of the Gilded Age is therefore both literal and symbolic. It represents the end of a daily cycle, a moment for reflection, and an acknowledgement of both human limitation and potential. It illuminates disparities, yet also reveals resilience. It underscores vulnerability, yet also highlights agency. It presents darkness, yet is punctuated with light, both literal and metaphorical. It is a time when the experiences of wealth and poverty, labor and leisure, culture and survival converge, offering a comprehensive portrait of life in 1880s America. By dawn, the city will awaken again, resuming the rhythms of labor, commerce, and social interaction. Yet the patterns established during the night, the preparation, reflection, resilience, and dreams, will carry forward, shaping the actions, decisions, and aspirations of the next day. In this sense, Nightfall is not merely an end, but a bridge, connecting the lived experiences of the present with the possibilities of the future, both for individuals and for society as a whole. Through the lens of night, one gains insight into the Gilded Age as a period of both brilliance and tension, of creativity and constraint, of aspiration and limitation. It is an era defined not only by material accumulation and industrial progress, but by the enduring human spirit, the negotiation of inequality, and the cultivation of culture, knowledge, and community. The night allows one to perceive these dynamics in a holistic and intimate way, appreciating the lived reality of millions whose daily experiences collectively shape the course of history. Even as darkness envelops the city, the human narrative persists. Work, leisure, culture, reflection, and aspiration continue in homes, factories, streets, and communal spaces. Children dream, adults plan, families nurture, and communities maintain cohesion. The city itself becomes a repository of stories, experiences, and memory, reflecting both the achievements and the contradictions of the Gilded Age. Nightfall, therefore, is both an end and a beginning, a time of reflection and preparation, of recognition and aspiration, illuminating the enduring legacy of an era that shaped the trajectory of modern America.